Okay guys, I'm stupidly excited about this video. As you can see, we have a special guest. You can kind of see. We're preserving some of his anonymity since this is such a dolly channel. But we have here the famous M, my husband. You guys have heard about him some in the hobby, and he has agreed to be interviewed about his perspective on the doll hobby and my participation in it. So we're all going to show him some love for being such a good sport. And I know I'm not the only one who's had videos that include their husbands. I know Nicole Bowling, I think, has done this with Daddy before. He's in a lot of the videos. He likes the dolls, so it's a little bit of a different situation. But so I don't have questions planned, so we're just going to roll with it. So if you can think back all the way to the beginning of when I first discovered the dolls, what was your initial thought? Because I was looking for them for our daughter.
My initial thought?
Yeah.
Before hearing the price tag?
Yeah.
Was, all right, she's getting a doll for my daughter. That's
okay.
fine.
And then from your perspective, how did the hobby unfold in our household?
Well, I don't know. Ultimately, it became an obsession very quickly, I think, and one which led to some concern for a minute there. But I mean, it started with looking for one doll, then getting a doll, and then next thing you know, it was buying a bunch of clothes for the doll and dressing up. And for a minute there, it was weird, but okay, in that, I taught her how to swaddle and do stuff like that, which is cool, but...
And by her, you mean me?
Yes, by you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And, and so that was all fine and whatnot, but then it quickly became something that she was all engulfed into, which started to create some concern because there was lack of things being done and an over obsession of stuff being focused in on that have nothing to do with our actual lives. And then one doll became two dolls, and then I said no more, which became another one, which ultimately was supposed to be this ridiculously expensive $1,500 doll. And, but was supposed to be the doll.
He's talking about Niklaus.
And so I reluctantly agreed, and then next thing you know, there was more dolls being positioned. And I don't necessarily mind somebody having a hobby, but when the hobby becomes your sole existence of life and the job that keeps us eating and even begins to allow for the expensive hobby to take place is being hindered because of a excessive amount of time, not only researching, but then getting involved in chat groups and outings. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a little weird having a freaking stroller again, taking up space when I no longer need a stroller, pardon my French.
Oh.
But and then like with my daughter, it's fine, right? When girls are little, they play with their doll, and and it's fine. But
it was a whole new weird thing to see an adult.
Yeah, it was weird seeing an adult, but it also became more than just a occasional thing to do or something to do with my daughter. It became an all-consuming lifestyle.
So would you say that the bigger problem is not the, and I say problem, but concern, thing that was causing an interruption in life was less so less on the physical doll side and more on the community, the involvement in the community, the time spent on social media and stuff like that. Do you think that that is?
Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, I get the art aspect of the dolls. It's very cool, you know, in terms of the amount of detail that goes into it. You know, I mean, I appreciate what the artist is doing and how many variations there are to things and that kind of, like, I get that. That's cool. And if I was filthy rich and we had an abundance of rooms that are completely unnecessary and it was not an obsessive thing, right? It would be something else to have a collector's room, like people collect, you know, sorry, random stuff, right? You know, whether it's people collecting magazines or someone collecting action figures or whatever, right? I mean, guitars or whatever, and that's fine, right? I get it from an artistic perspective. I just, it's not realistic. It takes up, when you have more baby doll clothes than you have of your own clothes, and it's for an inanimate object, right? There's a problem. You know, I'm just saying that shouldn't be the case, right? Because you're spending money on something that doesn't have any, it's not a living and breathing soul. And so I get the whole deep appreciation and tapping into that and connecting with that, because it is still energy on some level, but the trying to fill a void with a doll can become problematic.
And that's an interesting topic. I actually did a video earlier. I was reviewing an article from a psychotherapist who was talking. He was focused more on teddy bears, but he was focused on comfort dolls for adults, and actually the amount of men that admit to carrying teddy bears and hiding it when they travel because they get left behind in hotels, and they started to discover at Travelodge that there were like massive amounts of teddies that were actually didn't belong to children, is actually pretty high. So he started going into the psychology of a comfort doll for an adult, and is that something that's only a transitionary thing, or is it acceptable to have a comfort item? But that is a hot topic for sure. How many people collect because they're adorable? How many people couldn't have a child or lost a child, or they're an empty nester, or, you know, like, do they have anxiety? There's a lot of different reasons why some people collect, for sure.
Yeah, well, and, you know, I mean, as far as the teddy bear thing goes, that's interesting. Now, I do carry a teddy bear when I travel, but it's not because I have an attachment to it. It's because my daughter and my beautiful one in front of me interviewing me made it for me. So it travels with me so that I have a piece of my daughter. And now for Christmas, I received an actual doll that looks like my daughter. So I will be carrying that one. Yeah. But that's not I don't need a comfort thing or nothing like that, you know. That's just because I try and honor the people that, you know, that I care about, and that's one thing that I know she feels good about. So but as far as the other part of that, right, the people, you know, the other aspect of people collecting the dolls or something, you know, as a fill for, you know, not being able to have a child or anxiety or whatever, you know, I get, from a sociological perspective, I get having something to fill a void, but, you know, it boils down to even something like someone doing drugs, for example, right? You know, there are certain drugs that are obviously highly addictive, and then there's other ones that aren't. But the reality is that the person themselves have an addictive personality. We all do, right? Some people it's exercise, some people it's food, some people it's dolls, some people it's, you know, so there's good and bad needs for, you know, for something to be obsessive about, right? And obviously if someone's doing drugs, they could do too much of it, right? But then, you know, you could take a plant like marijuana, and somebody could use it from a medical perspective, right, where it's legal and it's been, you know, it's used to treat anxiety or something like that, since you brought that up, right? But yet at the same time they could use it as what the plant is, which is a canopy plant, right? It grows like a canopy. And if someone has an addictive personality and that's what they gravitate towards, now their comfort is this plant that they need all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And we all know people that have that kind of aspect. Well, since we all have this addictive personality, instead of looking for something outside of ourselves to grab towards, whether it's a doll, whether it's herbs, whether it's whatever, we're supposed to be working on ourselves inwardly instead of trying to fill a gap with something else.
Right.
You know.
Right. And that's definitely, I would agree. And I would agree that it is something that very easily and very quickly becomes addictive. I would say with anything too. There have been other things that I've collected or shopping sites I've got on where it became an obsession too. And so it's definitely something, not just me, but a lot of people have to watch themselves with. You can go into sort of this obsession frenzy. And so there's like this line where you have the enjoyment side of it, or from a therapy perspective, where it becomes a dependence. I definitely can see
it's
that.
a very fine line too, because
Sure.
and some people it's one thing, some people it's others. Like, you know, if I'm feeling depressed, you know, about money, I'll go spend more money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's, you know, one could say, well, that's a bad habit and it's it's letting an addictive personality thing take over. And on some level, it's all about perspective too, right? Because that's true. And yet at the same time, I could easily argue that when I do that, that's my energetically saying that money is nothing, and I'm going to allow for more to come by spending more.
We've talked about that on this channel for sure.
Yeah, so you know, so I get that, and then with that said, I could get how someone could say, well, since you say that, then it's the same thing with the doll. Well, it's yes, but if you're using it as a collection, and you have an overabundance of money, and that's not going to take away from your family in any way, shape, or form, right? Then you could argue that. But when you're putting it into something that's inanimate, it's like someone going and buying Louis Vuitton shoes or some crap like that, right?
Do that,
and
yeah.
people do that all the time, yeah. Or it's a Gucci purse or whatever the new hot thing is now, right? And the thing of it is like all those things are based on a sociological profile, right? Of we have to have more in order to be happy. You've got to make money in order to, you know, we got to save all this money so that when we retire we can live. You know, it's things like that.
Some
and
people
then you
just
got
love cute things. I mean,
it's true. Look, I have naturally an expensive taste.
right.
I try not to, but I am gravitated towards something before I see the price tag, and all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, that's the one.
too.
And then it always ends up being the most
That's
expensive.
the one.
You know, I mean, I get it.
Well, I mean, if you think about, you have a friend who collects expensive cars, right? It goes beyond the necessity for transportation. He
Right.
collects them because he loves them, and one could argue, well, you can use them, but one could also argue that the dolls are used too in a different way. So it seems like to me that the biggest thing is, you know, I don't think that you'll ever really relate to it in the way of like wanting a doll, but it seems like the biggest thing is like, how do you let it run your life? Or how does it fit into your life, and being conscious of tempering yourself and making sure you're not crossing that line, or me, and also space, funds, attention to family. Those are the things that were the biggest disruptors, not necessarily the fact that your woman collects an item you don't appreciate. It's more so like, where is that coming from, and is it controlling you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you collect a lot of weird that I know. You know, I mean, you got an abundance of serial killer dolls and stuff, right? You know, and voodoo dolls and stuff. You know, I mean, that's definitely not that. It's the fact that it takes away from one, your interaction with us. You know, I mean, you've spent time even when you weren't spending money on the dolls, right? You have had at least at the minimum an excessive amount of time spent on chats and everything else where there's orders that could be handled, or we've got stuff that we got to do here, or you could just be connecting with us and you're sucked into whatever BS is going on in someone else's world.
Right. Well, that's a good topic. So what are your thoughts on the drama that you've witnessed come through?
I'm completely 100% not shocked. I mean, look, here's the thing, right? In reality, in all of life, people, it's easier, it goes back to the other thing, right? It's easier for people to get through their lives when they're focused on other people's drama, when they're focused on other people's shit, right? Because it takes away from their having to look at themselves and deal with themselves, right? You know, I am by far not a perfect person. I've got plenty of issues, and yet I don't hide that I have them. And some people might think that the things that are the lesser values of me, that I applaud them because I speak so freely about them and I don't regret what I am. And it's not that. It's I accept and love me where I'm at right now while I'm working on consistently becoming better. And when I have a worse day, I love and respect that's where I was at. That's what I got, you know?
Right.
But I'm always facing myself in the mirror. I don't pretend that I don't have those issues. And I won't say anything about somebody that I wouldn't tell them straight to their face, you know? And that being said, I try not to really focus on anybody about anything. And nothing surprises me, because the reality is you're gonna have, whether it's male or female, you put enough people in a group, or you take enough eclectic people and put them together, there's bound to be, even when there's a common interest, there's bound to be things that set someone off. And even if they're not that way normally, where they talk a bunch of crap about people, they could just have a bad day and someone says something that rubs them the wrong way, and they're like, yeah, you know, that is a freaking blah, blah, blah. And then it's the age-old game. You could have said one thing, then it goes to the second person. Well, they say it to somebody else, and it's slightly different. Mm-hmm. And then by the time it gets to the third, there's some game that people play, right, where you tell somebody, they then write it down. They hand that written down piece of paper to somebody else, who has to re-say it, who then says it to someone else, who then has to write it down. By the time it gets to the original person, it's completely different than what the original statement was, right? Yeah. And that's been all throughout time, from childhood to now. I mean, that's just the way it is, right? Yeah. And so because of that, we really have to, one, accept everything with a grain of salt, and two, stop looking at everybody else's bullshit. No one's perfect. Pardon my French. No one is perfect, right? Everyone's got problems. Everyone's got flaws. Everyone's doing their version of their best, right? The sad truth is that a lot of people's version of their best is a cop-out, right? The everything in moderation is okay is a cop-out. You know, that's not you trying to do your best, because you giving excuses. My accepting when I've done something or when I'm not at my optimal best, that's not giving myself an excuse. That's saying, yeah, that's where I was at, and I'm still moving forward. But when someone says, well, I'm going to have my cheat day today and a little tomorrow, or I'm going to eat this thing that I know is not good for me a couple of times, and that's moderation, it's going to be okay. If you're having a couple of times a week, pardon my French, I guess, apparently.
I'm going to have to beep them all out.
All right, well, there's going to be a lot of beeping. But if you're eating, poop a couple of times a week, right, how is that any better for you than having it, once a week? It's bad for you, period, right? You don't want to eat poop. It's bad for your body, right?
Dear Lord, don't.
And so whatever it is, but, if we want to see what optimal health is about, you got to be willing to actually do the work. People tell me all the time with parenting, that because I will drop everything for my children, and, I put my daughter before anything and everything, period, 100% across the board, no matter what. And people say that I'm crazy or I'm excessive or whatever because I'm trying to give my child something different than what I had. And I hold myself to a level that requires me to sometimes sacrifice my own desires or my own freedoms or whatever in order to do it, right? And in the process of doing that, I think that's me walking the line. But when people say, well, you can, better to, it's fine, you can do, or that's okay for them to do that, or don't do that, or blah, 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 that's people, in my opinion, one, that's someone else's opinion, and good for you, everyone has an opinion, right? But that doesn't change what my viewpoint is for my child, right? But two, it's like, if you're telling me to do something less than for my child, it's not because that's the best thing for my child, it's because that's what makes my life easier. Right. Well, when people sign on to be a parent, you're a freaking parent first. In my opinion, people choose, the child's supposed to adapt to your life. Well, on some level, yes, that is true. However, if your life requires doing things that are less than the best for your child, then in my opinion, you're not living up to your potential, which how can you expect your child to live up to their potential? So, side note from your thing, but it boils down to the same principles.
And one of the beautiful things about the dolls is that I don't ever have to worry about screwing them up because I'm not giving my all as being a parent.
That is true. Well, unless something falls on them and you scratch their face.
That's true. So you have, dear Lord, don't let that happen. So next to you, on your left, you have Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
And on your right, you have Sparrow.
They're two totally different types of dolls.
They are. So Charlie is a vinyl reborn and Sparrow is a full body silicone. Which one do you think is cuter?
I mean, neither of these are my favorites.
Yeah.
So, by the way, the animal style dolls are pretty cool. I mean, that person you showed me that did
The werewolf?
the Caesar.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like that's pretty cool.
Those art dolls.
But again, that's like that. I look at it, it's like, man, that's some amazing art. I'm not gonna carry the thing. I mean, I might carry it around for the playful aspect at first, but like that's not gonna be something that, like, if I owned that, it's not something that I would be coddling every day.
Right.
You know.
Well, I caught
But it would be super dope. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, so. But yeah, between these, you know, they're two totally different.
Yeah.
This one on the right, I mean, you know,
Sparrow.
it's got some cool factors, you know. They're kind of, all of them are a little bit creepy in their own way because some of the still poses that some of them are in. Look, I'll tell you, I am one of the people that can look at I look at most people and most things in life and find the beauty in them. But I'm not going to lie, and I know I'm going to be hated on horribly in this moment, but I'm going to be saying the honest truth. All babies are beautiful in that they're existing creatures, right? But not all babies are beautiful.
Right.
Externally, right? They're all radiant from the inside, you know, because I don't think that there's any, even the ones that are going to grow up to become a serial killer or something, I don't think that they don't have a beautiful spirit inside, right? So there's that. But there are some fugly
Long live Dexter
babies, you know, and I know I'll get hated on for that. I mean, look,
I don't think
they broke the mold when they made my daughter, so that's all there is. But
so do you think? So you've held both dolls before. We're not going to ask you to hold them now. Which one do you prefer? Ronan went to stay with my mom for a little bit.
Oh, there you go. I don't prefer any of them. You know, they're weighted weird. The one on the right, Sparrow, is definitely weighted weird.
No, she's not weighted. She is the weight of her silicone. You think
I know.
It's because she's so floppy, you mean?
Yeah, which, you know, a brand new baby is pretty floppy, but I don't know.
It's a hard question.
I can see benefits on both sides when I've held them in terms of like what feels a little more realistic versus another, that kind of a thing. But I don't think that any of them are I don't think any of these are great. I think if I had to choose, I know you're turning towards this one over here, but I don't know.
They're cute in their own way, and
yeah, I mean, I like the facial expression of this one better.
That's Charlie. She's the favorite, actually, on my channel. People love her the most.
Yeah, I mean, it looks more kind of natural. There's something about the way that this one looks, though, that I don't like. Now, the mouth on this one's pretty awesome, though. I do like the mouth.
Yeah.
It looks very realistic.
Yeah, cool. All right. Do you have any questions for me that you want me to pose to people?
I mean, no. I mean, you could certainly be interesting to see how many of you realize, you know, how much of an obsession this has become versus a healthy habit.
Oh, people are going to be in an uproar, honey, about
I'm sure.
what a jerk you are, I'm sure. But I just want to tell everybody that if he was a jerk, I wouldn't be with him. But also, he's a Virgo. And most women, that will explain a lot. He's opinionated, and he's a perfectionist. but all of that stems from the huge amounts of pressure and expectation he puts on himself. And so you cannot help but radiate out to the rest of the world what you do to yourself. So if you think that he was a butthead in this video, you can only imagine what he does to himself to rise to the next level. So, yeah.
Yes, I
What would they say about the way that a Virgo expresses sympathy when you get hurt? Well, I told you not to do that. Pretty much.
It depends on the situation.
Yeah, of course. You know, I'm overly empathetic and emotional, and I would say that you are extremely emotional, but on the other side. And so, anyway, it works.
Oh yeah, I think that's what creates balance. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, hopefully I'm not hating on too much in the sense that while I do speak my mind, and I don't apologize for that, I do appreciate the art aspect of it. It's not that I don't see the art. It's the other. And if having, just to clarify, if having one of these babies, one being the operative word, right, soothes someone's need in the moment while they're trying to find a way to work on themselves, as a, for someone who absolutely desperately needed a baby or something or whatever, right? If that soothes something for the interim, great. If it becomes where that is their live baby and that's
where they stop, the line between reality and fantasy.
Yeah, where it becomes just this muddy water and there is no clear defining lines of reality. Well, then
it's a distraction from progress.
Yeah, and exactly. It's a distraction of progress as a person. It's a distraction to. I mean, hell, man, it's a fine line between somebody who will kill somebody and somebody who won't, right? It's still the same person. It's just a matter of what way you were snapped.
Possible. Most people are capable of anything.
I think all people are capable of anything. It's just a matter of what guidance you have and what directions you're pushing forward.
I will tell you that there are a lot of folks that are just true doll collectors. They've collected dolls since they were kids. This is like the ultimate baby doll, and they collect all different kinds of dolls, and that's part of it. There are collectors that they have the space to do it. And it's not, yeah, and it's not, but then on the other side, there's one of the woman who bought Keanu from me. They gave away a reborn to a channel that they follow where they've been following this girl's pregnancy journey, and then she had a miscarriage, and she was like really distraught, and she was following her journey of trying to get pregnant again, and they gifted her with a reborn, and the reborn actually ended up looking a lot like what they thought their baby would, and and now she has a real baby, but it did help her during her process. So there's like all different.
Well, and that's that
sides.
Interim process I was talking about, right? This is a short-term
solution. So for me, just so you know, because I think there was a time that you were afraid that I was feeling distraught that we hadn't had a child together, that I'd never had a baby, and you thought maybe this was a replacement or this was going to make me want one or something like that, just so you know because I think about it, I feel like it allows the mothering instinct to be expressed and appreciated at the infant stage. Like I never had the experience of shopping for baby clothes, changing the baby, all that stuff. And so there's that part of it that subconsciously appeals to me. It's not why I started buying them, and still am attracted to them because I think they're friggin' adorable, and I just I can't get enough cuteness, and that is really literally where it's at for me. But I do recognize that just like when little girls play with dolls and they're practicing mothering, like it is an innate instinct in me, but I don't have them for therapy, but I do notice that, and I think it's just like any playing guitar, not that I'm comparing doll collecting to making music, but anything that brings you into the moment and takes your mind off of spinning on your troubles, I do notice that it can take me from being on edge where I just take a moment and I change an outfit and stuff, and it can bring me back. And I think that's because it is something that you focus your outside energy on. And one final thought on that I talked about earlier today was Joseph Campbell, when he talks about following your bliss and how that helps to raise your internal vibration, and that helps you to discover your purpose. And it can be listening to this, doing the thing that anybody thinks is stupid, whether it's listening to your favorite music that nobody likes, or whatever it is behind closed doors, whatever it is to bring that fulfills you in a way that you don't necessarily think you could explain or need to explain, and then that has like lasting impacts in your life. I think that hobbies are a form of bliss for people, and I think that's kind of the best way that I could understand it, because it doesn't make sense. They don't do anything, but I love them.
No, I mean, I get that. I definitely get the hobby aspect. I mean, and which is fine. But what you just described, right, is a tool. Right? It's just like meditation. Meditation can bring you into that state of bliss and the state of presence and now. It's just different ways of getting where you're trying to go. The difference is one is maybe having a more long-term effect, whereas the other is a short-term effect, which is absolutely fine. But when you're pausing to spend a couple of minutes, right, that's one thing. When it becomes the obsession that it was becoming, where it's hours, right, that's another. Right?
I agree. I agree.
I don't mind. You often go in the room. I know part of it you're working, part of it's that you're messing around with the doll. Come in and you're messing around with the doll, right? I don't have a problem with that stuff. I don't have a problem with any of it until it becomes a problem.
Because it was overtaking.
It was overtaking the business. It was overtaking even your, because of some of the drama you were dealing with women dragging you into that had nothing to do with you, and then saying that you're saying this or whatever. I mean, there was a bunch of BS drama that you had. Really, I would have shut it off in the first place because it had no benefit to you and wasn't even something that you actually did, right? But the reality is when you start getting into that part of the world, it's taking away from what makes you a better person,
right?
Because you're getting sucked into stuff. When you're taking too much time to where you're agitated when your real live daughter wants to say something to you or have you come do something, but you're agitated because you're in the middle of dealing with that crap or because you're playing with your doll, like that's a problem.
Right.
That's where it becomes a line that's crossed, you
right.
know. When it's everything's done and you're gonna have your coffee and you're changing an outfit and there's no one needs you or anything right now. I mean, we always need you, but like no one, there's nothing pressing. Great, have fun. I frequently grab a guitar and stand in the middle of the hallway and play for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? Boom, done. I get my fill. I'm out of and I'm back on to the next thing.
I have a history of going extreme when I get into new things, and I changed my whole life to be just that. It happened with religion. It happened with certain diets. It happened with hula hooping, which was positive. It happened, but I spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours watching hula hooping videos. It happened even in a new relationship. So the good news is that I tend to balance out because I find how it integrates into the rest of my life, and then I miss the other things that I've put to the side.
Well, sometimes you need something. That's where I benefit you and you benefit me, though, because while you might figure it out on your own,
which I always have historically,
as you often do, yeah. But like when it's causing a hindrance across the board, and you've got someone here that's holding a mirror up saying, "Yo, you're slipping," right? And then it brings attention to it faster, I think, than you would have seen it otherwise, right? Because you're in it, and you've got it. It's like cornering a fight. Someone who's in the ring, they only see one perspective. The person on the outside sees the whole picture. Right.
Well, and the other thing is that when you're in a relationship, you're not the only person there. And so whether you agree with it or not, if your behavior is upsetting or hurting or causing neglect to the people around you, then you should appreciate when they tell you that this is causing a problem, and because then it gives you the opportunity to adjust. And let's face it, when you're in a relationship, you're considering the other person's feelings. It matters to you, or you would just be on your own. So you do have to, even if you think that you'd be perfectly happy spending 28 hours of the day shopping for dolls and playing with dolls and watching videos about dolls, if you share your life with other people, you're not the only one that you affect. And so it is good to listen to the people around you that are giving you reflection, especially when they come in a rational way.
And the person who's with you, right, should ideally, like I even said at one point, if this is what's going to bring you to your highest bliss in life, right? I want you to have that.
Right.
It just can't be with me. I can't to go that
You
far.
mean making it my whole life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that, but because I love you, right? I want you to have your highest happiness. And
I
if
don't
that
think
was
it's
going to
dolls.
be your world, then great. I
I
want you
would
that.
suspect, so just to temper all the flaring tempers out there right now, I suspect that if I became obsessed with almost anything to where I allowed it to take over my life, that would probably be the case.
Oh yeah, that's not that.
It's
Yes,
not-
that's anything.
Right.
And they would be the same for me though, right? If I'm going in a direction, doing something that isn't necessarily in your wheelhouse, and you're tolerating it, but then I'm taking it to an excess, and then you're telling me that it's bothering you, and I'm still taking it to an excess, well then you ultimately have the choice for the same thing, which is to either, tolerate it and deal with that, or to say, look, you know what, I love you, I see that this is where you're going, I want this for you if this is really what's in your highest good, but my path is walking different than that.
Right.
Right? And if in my opinion, if you're truly in love with somebody, that age old thing about if you love them, let them go. If they come back, then yours forever or whatever. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that whole statement, but I do agree that if I'm working on me and I'm whole and well within myself and I'm walking this way and you're whole within yourself and you're walking that way and we're walking together, right, then we're complementing each other.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I don't need you, you don't need me, but together we're stronger, right?
Yeah.
And in that we need each other, right? But then if I'm walking and my path starts to shift this way, and your path naturally would continue going this way, well, then there's a choice point where you're either going to adjust who you are to be with me, and maybe it balances back out, but maybe it doesn't, and you're taking that risk. But then that's your choice. You can't be mad at me that you went this way, right? And otherwise, your other choice would be to say, I still love you, and everything is good, and I want it to stay that way, and this is the direction I've got to go. Let's see what this looks like if you're feeling that you have to go that way.
Right.
And to me that's true love.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that's saying, man, I hope we connect back, but my bigger hope for you is that you're happy.
Right.
And that I have to also honor myself and be happy.
Right.
And then maybe along the way, we've had plenty of curves, right? Where we're like, well, I'm going this way with you. All right, I'm going to bend a little bit this way. I mean, that's a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, our core has been the same direction, right?
Right.
It's been about bettering yourself, trying to eat well, see what you're capable of,
Yeah, a lot of you ladies, well, I don't know if you are watching, but a lot of people have had negative reaction to the, let's say the limits that are put on my collection that are agreements that I've made in this house. And the knee-jerk reaction is, and I've addressed this before, the knee-jerk reaction is nobody should tell you what to do. You should do whatever you want to do. You're your own person. It's not. And as I've said before, it's not about being controlled or ordered around. It's about choosing paths together. It's about honoring somebody else's and listening to somebody else and being a realist too, because we do live in a small house.
Yes.
With a lot of stuff in it. And to be honest, these dolls are expensive. I can't just shove them in a drawer somewhere. So, but we're not breaking up. We're not breaking up. We're not parting ways. I think that Michael would agree that I've balanced out internally on the way that I am about them. I used to, no lie, keep myself up until 2 a.m. scrolling through eBay. I mean, and it was like I couldn't put it down, and that was a problem. So, yeah. So it's definitely balanced out. It's better. They're cute. I think they're cute.
Well, and there ended up being another one coming into the house anyway. So.
Well, we have. I'm capped at 4, so that's 4 is the most that can be accommodated.
I'm talking about the one that Naya won.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you've got 4 that you interchange through, and Naya will have 3.
Yes, we have a silicone baby that was won in a contest that is a portrait baby or a baby based on Naya's baby picture. It's a slow process, but eventually I trust that baby will find its way home and will be gorgeous. So we're gonna see. But yeah, I mean, it would be nonsense to have more than that in here. We have a tiny home. So
But that ultimately, as far as the collection point goes, I mean, that's definitely a large part of it, right? Is the restriction of space.
Yep.
And
yeah, it'd be like if you decided to collect cars and park them all over our backyard.
right, next thing you know,
with no regard for anybody else needing to use the yard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. You know, and that's just common care and everything else. If we had an abundance of money and like 2 extra rooms, and one of them is just your room for
Then you
whatever
don't
the hell
really
you
care what I
want
put
in
in
there,
there.
right? And then you could have $50 and it might be fine. But if all of a sudden the $50, you know, becomes obsessive again, right? It doesn't matter if it's 1 or 50. That has no relevance, right?
Well, you can have the same behavior side by
Exactly.
side. It's all about where it's coming from.
And that's where the problem
and do you
is.
have self-control?
Yeah.
And are you being honest with yourself?
Yeah, and that's the thing. You know, if I get obsessive about something and it's bothering you, you say something. I don't tend to, you know.
Well, you also
Other than being a
restrict
jerk
yourself.
sometimes, I'm very. That's exactly it. I am, like you mentioned earlier, I'm so hard on myself that I literally put in place. If I feel like I'm becoming dependent on something, if I see it at all, I stop it right then and there. I mean,
Yeah.
years ago,
Well,
I
like-
was a smoker. I quit smoking because I realized I was addicted to
Right.
it. It was then and there, period. I don't allow it. It's done.
Yep. Yeah.
But
he's
for the
just-
longest time, I kept a cigarette handy.
just in case.
No, it wasn't even a just in case, actually. It was a reminder to myself that I'm stronger than the thing that I was dependent on. And so I always kept it there so that I could mentally, right? From a mental perspective, it was like this. When you could go all day and not eat a thing. But if you're going to go in for surgery and they tell you at midnight you can't eat until after your surgery,
starving.
you're instantly needing every freaking thing on the
And
planet,
you feel
right?
so sorry for yourself.
Exactly. And that's a mental thing,
Yeah.
right? And so the one aspect of, at the time, it was cigarette, right? Keeping a cigarette around was the mental aspect of, if I need it, I have it,
Yeah.
right? And then came the stronger version of me, which is I have it and I don't need it.
Right.
I don't need anything. And
That's
thus,
well said.
yeah, you know, you move through it. And then you're not dependent on anything.
Well, I would say that Michael is slightly, at least slightly more on the side of being willing to self-deprive or self-limit in order to be really to find balance, control, and high achievement in life, and challenging himself in life. And I'm slightly on the other side of things where that appeals to me. However, I also have the angel in that movie with Nicolas Cage back in the day that just was like, this is life, live it up, so I'm kind of in the middle, I would say, where I don't want something to control me, but I do like to indulge a little bit.
You know what's funny about that is and I would agree with that. And yet the funny part is that just like the case of the cigarette or when I quit anything else that I've stopped, or taken a break from, or whatever the case is, I have that part of me that wants to just say and could easily do anything and live it up because I've only got however little time I got left. But it's because that's so appealing to me, it's so almost addictively appealing to me, is why I don't let it happen.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know that it would be very easy for me to, it's not that I can't go and break rank every once in a while and do whatever. I've done it, right? It doesn't change me.
Right.
But I know that, it's just like taking all this time off of work, the more I take off, the less appealing it is to go back to work.
Right, exactly. And so you don't even want to dip your toe in because
Right.
the water might be so nice.
Exactly. Well, and the thing of it is because also part of what makes me who I am is the constant drive to see what can I be, and be happy with who I am, but what can I be as I grow?
Well, and my mission is to help you learn how to be happy being.
Right.
All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being a good sport. Everybody's going to show you some love. And thank you guys for sticking around if you did. I know this was a long chat, but I thought it would be super fun. And secretly, he loves the babies.